Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Thursday. It's February 22nd. This will be our chart lesson for the day. Looking at the daily chart, man, another huge bullish day up. I mean, really bullish day up today. We did close off the highs, but most of that came well after 2:30, our cutoff time. So this thing just keeps marching higher. We're definitely uptrend. As I've said before, my guess is this thing will last through November at a minimum. That's my opinion. The key is that we follow the price action, and when it changes, we'll change. So as long as it's going up, we're going to go with it. But anyway, you can see it, big bullish day. It looks similar on the 2000 tick chart. We had a spike up kind of day, but let's flip over there to it and take a look. Okay, here it is. You can see we spiked up here. We went flat a little bit, but there's really kind of a two-legged correction. It's a little different than a two-legged correction, though. So you might have looked at that as a possibility of being the center of the pattern. It never hurts to, draw it and see what happens. And you can see we got really, really close there. That's where we found most of the resistance. So it looks like it's a two-legged correction. But this feels more sideways, but you can still see there's two legs of correction there. We got this leg, and then there's a two-legged correction in the middle, and then another leg. Even though they're not measured legs, it's still two legs of correction, and we took off again. And we did have some sideways action here and then here, but eventually once it was clear this trend line was in place, it was off to the races. And we just kind of kept working higher until we found this resistance here at 51.05. And so we've already climbed another 100 points really since yesterday. I mean, this market's just on a tear. It just keeps going. So, but there were two news items right here and here, and maybe that's why we were kind of working sideways a little bit. But let's zoom in here where we can see a little better, and we'll go through the trades. You had to kind of sit patient early on because this came out at 7:30, and so there really wasn't anything setting up between 7 and 7:15 or so. So you just kind of had to sit tight. And then we had kind of a two-legged correction down. I believe these are separate trends because this one comes down and you do get a close outside and a new low, and it looks like we're going to go higher out of this range, and it fails and turns into another trend. Then you get a break, a couple of legs down, and you bounce where we've had some support resistance previously. You can see that right there. So the first trade I saw that was possible, there's a second entry short here, and I marked it green. You can see we're working down, and you get a first entry and then a second entry. The problem is you don't have a lot of room to that low right there, although you would expect prices to make a new low. So maybe you take that one. It's the first thing really. I mean, you might have taken this on a failure, but you really needed to wait on a lower high here. That's another possibility that maybe you could argue to be green. But then it does bounce down here. But normally I'd say you might go along there, but it's in the news item, so just sit tight. That's this 8:45 news item, and that happens about 8:37 or so. And this thing shoots up, pulls back, shoots up. So you get two legs up, and it makes a lower high right there. I marked this one green because it's a little bit congested, although you probably got to realize the reason it's congested is because there's resistance across there. You can see it's been, and it is a triple test. So maybe you go short there. It's the thing I would say is make sure you got room back to this trend line, which you do. And so it would have worked even if it bounces here, and of course it does right off the trend line. It takes off again, and it's just bouncing off the highs until finally you get a lower high here. And normally I would say you probably wouldn't want to go short on an uptrend, but if you do the two measured legs, there's basically a perfect measured leg. You can see this leg and then the two-legged correction, but it's also a failed breakout, and we've never come back to retest that breakout area. And so prices will almost always, so that's what this was, a pullback to retest that. And if you go up here, I always put the line where you get the most touches, but if you go up here to where the last high was here, you can see that's a perfect pullback to retest that breakout area. So that's what that is right there. So I like this being that far away from the EMA and being this far, this far away from the EMA for that long. I like that lower high in such a bearish bar. You're going to get a scalp out of that most likely, and it could come all the way back and do the retest. I would expect that it looked like it was going to try to bounce there, but we were coming back to make that retest. But you'd still expect a retest of the highs here, and it did try it and just started finding all that resistance. A lot more selling came back in there. I don't think you can sell any of that. It just doesn't. It's not a very good setup. And the next thing you know, we're working sideways here. But notice you get a 1, 2, 3 triple test, and that basically makes a double bottom. It is a second entry, although we're not looking for that. So I like entering there. And of course, it runs right back to the highs. But here, the signal bar is not perfect, and it makes a slightly higher high. This was lower than what we'd kind of been getting in there. So I just think it's risky to take that one. I'd wait. Of course, it bounces again. It comes back. And here we do make another higher, but it closes back inside that line. And we've been running back and forth off that line and this line. So now I think you can argue you got a triple test and take that. I mean, if it would have closed outside the support resistance line right there, which it's really just a resistance line, hadn't acted as support yet, but when it closes outside, you don't know that it won't act as support. So when it closes inside here, I think you're fine to go short, especially since it's been running up, down, up. It's probably going to go down again, which it does. And we do bounce down here again. Too much congestion, not enough signal bar, and of course you get two legs right back up to that resistance area again and another bearish bar. And again, it's a second entry short. So I like going short there. This time it doesn't make it to the lows, and it turns and breaks out, and you get another two legs up. And I didn't measure them, but they look like they're pretty dang close to me. This one came up a little short, and then it leads to a bigger sell-off, and that's what you would expect. Notice that there are two legs up regardless, and that is a second entry way away from the EMA. You really need to wait on a lower high there, but I mean, if you're going to take a risky one, that's the one to take, because it's also a failed break out of this range here. So the odds are it's going to at least come back to the EMA and maybe back to test that, and it actually tests that and fails and keeps going lower. So I like that entry. This is a reversal here. Notice you get a first entry and a second entry that quickly fails. Normally I'd probably make this one red, because now we got the new high end for this channel after the break too. So we got everything we need to reverse here. So, but the problem is there's just not much room to scalp out right there. So you're really kind of going low at the short at the low of the move, and that's never a really good idea, because it could go right there and bounce. But this is a pretty strong, I mean, this has been pretty bearish so far, and it's clearly, this confirms the trend line. So if you're going to be aggressive, that's one to take. And that turns out to be a great move, and then we're just bouncing sideways again. And here you get a triple test, but you just don't have enough room right there. So I don't think you can take that one. You don't really ever get anything here until you bounce off that trend line, you make a higher low, and it does break out, and then it pulls back and it bounces right off that trend line again, and now you pretty much got a triple test again right there with higher lows each time. Notice you got a higher low here and a higher low there, but you tested it. Really, you could call that a test too because it closed inside that line, but you got at least a triple test there. And a nice signal bar. So and you pretty much confirmed this trend line. I like going long there. You don't know that it's going to take off. The other problem is you may not have got in this because it just gaps over there and keeps going. If it moves real quick like that, drop a limit order where you would have put your original buy or sell buy stop, and just see if it won't come back and pick you up your limit order. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But we spike up and go into a channel, but we quickly get a break and then a couple of legs up, and then we're coming back to the trend line again. So it looks like we're kind of losing some momentum here, but this trend line holds. It closes outside, but that's not a convincing close outside. You could adjust your trend line there, and everything would still fit fine. And this is a new low right here, swing low. So that's a first entry, second entry. So that's the first bar to break higher after that second entry short. So that you could treat that like a failure as well. Plus you're a little ways away from the EMA. You got a double bottom there. Yeah, there's some lower stem, but I'd still call that a double bottom. And this thing takes off. You just get a first entry there. It's moved a little far for a higher low. And then you get two legs up and you get a break. You do have a second entry right here, but you're just now drawing that trend line. And so there's no confirmation of it yet. That doesn't come till here. And you're still in this downtrend. So I just think you have to skip that. But notice what happens. It runs up. You get a break. Couple of little swings to a new high, and then it turns down. I don't think you can go short there though, because you're still in two different trends here, the gray one and the bigger picture too. But it comes back and bounces right off that trend line, and you got a bar there that's 4 ticks. It's not even a good signal bar, but just simply because it's off that key entry point, it is. You probably could argue that that's a first entry, second entry failure. It doesn't really, the counts don't really match up, but it's just something you might think of. The only reason I didn't make this blue most likely is because it is a first entry and this trend channel is still in play. We had this other one that didn't matter, and you see it's almost a repeat pattern. So look at that big bar right after, just like that. And the real key is only 4 ticks, so it's so low risk in an uptrend, and you're buying with the uptrend, that I think it's worth taking. And it comes up here and you get a first entry, second entry. Technically, this looks a little like congestion with a failed breakout, but it is by the counts as second entry. Notice how we were finding resistance at that midline on this blue channel. That's this line running here. And then it pushes through and it tests it once and it tests it again. So you got a couple of tests there, and you could also trade that like a failed break lower. So I like going long there. Again, it's a little aggressive, so I did mark it green. But you can, if you're going to be aggressive, it's this kind of days, real strong trends and entering with the trend. But you can see there's not many big corrections here all the way up till we hit the other side of the channel. There's another second entry here, but technically this is your signal bar. You could use these since they have matching lows, so you could use this one, but you're going long after you've already made a new high there. So it's a little iffy. So I just think that's too congested, and this bar is too big. I mean, it's really only 12 ticks, so it's not like a humongous bar, but just the setup's not perfect. And of course it runs on up. It would have worked, but that's we don't know that till after the fact. And then you make a lower high here, but again, this looks real congested. That's not a very good signal bar. Even though the odds are it's probably coming back to this trend, this EMA, I think you have to skip it. And of course it runs on down. And I think you could consider this a second entry, but you're so close to that trend line, you just don't know what's going to happen there. Maybe it bounces, maybe it goes shoots straight on through and goes all the way down, but you just can't tell here. And this does look a little congested, so you could get burned there. It could bounce, even if it is going to go lower. So I just think you have to skip that one. So it bounces here and it just gives a close outside, and then it just kind of works its way lower. I don't see anything else there that you can take short, and there's no longs there until now. You got to close outside and a couple of legs to a new low. It's kind of an odd spot, but look how far we are away from the EMA, and prices just don't stay away from the EMA that far for very long. So you don't want to be too risky, but when you get this higher low with plenty of room back, I like taking that, and it ends up going much higher. There's a second entry short right here that's tempting, but you're in this channel and it closed above that midline on this bigger channel, so we could be heading higher again, which we are, although it comes back down and takes off again. There's no other trades, and that takes us into 230, just not any other setups there. So there's a few trades in here. What's so frustrating is you get this huge trend that's so strong, and you just don't get a lot of chances to enter it. There aren't many setups, so you have to take what you can get on them. And sometimes that means taking a little riskier trade here and here. Otherwise, you just have to sit and watch it. So if you are going to take the risk, make sure it's with the trend on a trend day, and that it's a pretty strong trend. Now, you don't even want to risk that back down in here, because we're still kind of choppy and working sideways, and you can get chopped up. But once we get to here, we're starting to make, and by the time here, you can tell it's a pretty strong trend. But anyway, there it is. That's how I saw it today. We did have the 2 news items, so I mean, you had to be real patient this morning. But honestly, you've heard me say it before. I'll say it again for anybody new. The key to this is being disciplined and patient, and that's really the difference between an average trader and a really good professional trader. Is the professional guys are super disciplined and they're super patient. They don't force trades. They're waiting on sure things. They understand how to read this chart. They understand price movements, and they just simply sit there and wait. And when they get these good trades that come back that fit their rules, boom, that's when they enter. And that's the difference between amateurs and professionals, because amateurs are constantly looking for, especially new people, they're looking for an entry on every swing in both directions. No clue. Trying to pick tops, looks like we're topping out here, but look what happens. We keep going. That's why you don't try to pick tops. You got to you got to already have a confirmed trend to be taking shorts and longs here at the same time. And before you really want to go short, you got to get a confirmed trend in the opposite to the short side. Otherwise, just sit and be patient. But anyway, I hope that was helpful for you today. Again, this looks like a spike and channel to me, and that's how I played it. Occasionally people will send me their chart, and they ask me about another look to a channel they saw or the way they saw it. And if it gets you to the same place, it's okay if you see it a little different, because sometimes you can get alternate trends and channels that end up leading to the same place. But if it's totally different, it leads you totally somewhere else, then I'd be rethinking it, because then there's probably something wrong with your channel. But just because you don't get the exact same channel I do, as long as you get something close to it, or something that gets you to the same exact conclusions that my channel does. And sometimes you can, like I said, you can get alternate. They won't be off that. It won't be that much different, but they'll be slightly different, but they'll still get you to the same place. Generally, those are okay. So anyway, let's wrap it up. Today is Thursday, so no chart lessons on Fridays. We'll be back again to Monday. It was a short week because of President's Day or whatever. But we'll be back again to do it Monday. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.